Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. We've got our recap from the All-State Sugar Bowl, Notre Dame against Georgia in New Orleans. It was postponed today due to the tragedy down there, but Joe, we did get a game. Notre Dame takes care of business 23-10, and this was the only game where the team that had a bye, that would be Georgia, was favored, but it was the Fighting Irish who really controlled this game from the jump. They did fall behind by a field goal early. They took the lead with 2 field goals, and then the game really turned on its head right before halftime when the Irish defense gets a huge turnover. They're able to turn what was looking like a 6-3 halftime lead into 13-3, and then they return the second half kickoff. So it goes from 6-3 to 20-3 in about 45 seconds of game action. Georgia does respond with a touchdown of their own, but Joe, the turnaround of halftime, the turnover, the touchdown, and then the kick return really was the difference in this one.
John, these are the plays Notre Dame in the big games has been on the wrong end of. So I think it was really refreshing for Irish fans to see this happen. And this is the first time they've really beaten a major SEC opponent like this. The last time I don't think even in our lifetime shot in a game that meant anything. I know they'd beaten LSU in a previous bowl game, but in terms of games that truly, truly matter, this has to be kind of an exorcism in a way for Irish fans. They had the Clemson game during COVID, but a lot of people could say Trevor Lawrence and half the offensive line didn't play. They were oh so close twice against Georgia, both 2017 and 19, and then albeit not an SEC team, but an SEC caliber team, at least the past SEC caliber team, twice against Ohio State, denied right at the finish in 2023. So for Irish fans, the way I'd put it, I think they play called aggressively, but they kind of let Georgia beat themselves,
Yeah,
which is not something I would ever think I would say about Georgia this year.
I think we did go into this game thinking that both teams would be patient, but Notre Dame was ready to pounce when their opportunities came. It was kind of a nothing first half, really. A lot of, not a ton of turnovers, just a bunch of really long drives that you knew probably weren't going to end up in touchdowns. But in a game like this, it really did seem like whoever was kind of take control first would win. Obviously, Notre Dame with a huge 14 points around halftime. But Joe, the Notre Dame defense really stood out to me here. Obviously, they were able to slow down Indiana in the first round game, and they're able to do that again here to Georgia. Gunnar Stockton does end up with an all right stat line, 234 and a touchdown. And I actually thought he made some really nice throws, Joe. I'm not so sure that Carson Beck would have been, a ton different in this one. I think the Irish defense is where you have to start when you talk about how this game fell into their favor.
Absolutely, sure. I think Al Golden and Tom Allen have really been the coordinators of the playoff for me, in terms of consistently over the last, in these teams' cases, 2 games. I think they've won it on defense. I think Riley Leonard on his own, 15 to 24, 90 yards. That's not great. What he did on the ground is more significant. But the reason he only had to put up pedestrian numbers like that against Georgia, and keep that in mind, Georgia, is because the defense was so dominating. I mean, Georgia on the 4th and 2 and toward the end of the third quarter. I mean, to be completely honest with you, Sean, Georgia's offensive play calling looked foolish the way Al Golden kind of schemed them up. Not only were they more prepared, they executed so well when they had to. I can't think of one like huge play where Georgia had a distinct advantage because Notre Dame necessarily messed up in a huge way, and that should speak volumes. I think a lot of Irish fans were worried, particularly after the Ohio State game. There was only 10 guys on the field when Tatum got to the end zone on that final play in South Bend in September of 23. I think all of those doubts are pretty quiet right now, Sean. I think he's developed as a head coach, which is not such a crazy development. Lou Holtz's famous quote is, I made mistakes when I was a first-time head coach, but it was at William and Mary, so no one gave a you-know-what. Marcus Freeman, his mistakes were in front of the entire country, Notre Dame being one of the most watched teams in America. But I think from, the 15-month difference between that night in South Bend and this night in New Orleans, he's come full circle as a head coach. Now, I think he's got a long way to go. I definitely don't think Notre Dame is satisfied going just to the semifinal. I think they'd be happy if it ended there. But Notre Dame's been in this spot before, Sean. They've been in a title game in the last 12 years. They've been in two college football playoffs. I think it's time for them to take the next step. They've gotten here with Brian Kelly, albeit maybe they didn't get as big a win as this, but they've been here before. So the Irish as a whole are no strangers to the moment, but I do think this is the most confident and most accomplished they've been up to getting to the 14, if that made sense.
Yeah, Joe, we've really talked kind of all year about how they've been so good when they've played with a lead. And again, that kind of was the case here. It seems like that is more of a mental thing at this point. I think they're first to adjustments, and they're never playing catch up. They're never, they're making the adjustments, and then the other team's having to figure out a way to stop it, and then they get to do something else. And it seems like Marcus Freeman is a step ahead of really every coach, at least since the USC game in these games. They've been patient. They've pounced when the opportunity was there. The special team stuff is really interesting, Joe, from Marcus Freeman's point of view. He had that play where he was subbing people in and out. He did it against Indiana on like a fake field goal where he made Cignetti burn a timeout, and then he does it again here. And maybe he is that's a real ultra confident move, but you have to say, Joe, that Freeman at this point hasn't really had to deviate from what he's probably expected to go into game plan wise. And whether those adjustments came, it was before the other team made theirs. So from a mental point of view, I think you're right about that quiet confidence. Notre Dame, as underdogs, you can't go into a game like that and win with that game plan. We're just going to do our thing until they mess up. That's what the team that's favored is supposed to do. And they've been conducting their business that way, and it will be interesting if they can continue to do that, if their defense can continue to be at a different level in the semifinals. But this is a quarterfinal recap. The Irish defense was great. Marcus Freeman coaching was great. Riley Leonard on the ground was great, especially because Jeremiah Love still doesn't look 100%. And him and Jadarian Price really didn't provide a lot, but 80 yards on the ground. And Joe, I thought there were a couple opportunities where he could have run it when he didn't. So he's doing enough. I think with the four teams that remain, that's kind of the theme with all the quarterbacks. Is they're not the best player on their team. They're supplemented by some great units, but they're doing what they're being asked. And I think that's what Riley Leonard is doing right now.
1,000,000% shot. I don't think I could have even thought of that in terms of the quarterback not being the best player, but doing what they're supposed to. That's been a theme
I think it's true on all four of the teams.
But I never really extrapolated it to Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Texas. So that's a very interesting theme you brought up. One last thing on Riley Leonard. That's what he was brought here to do, right, Sean? He didn't have to be Superman. He just had to extend plays. I think one thing, Sam Hartman I thought was efficient for Notre Dame, but I really don't think he provides quite the mobility threat that Riley Leonard has for most of this year. So that's added a totally different dimension to Notre Dame's offense, and I think it's something they need to exploit for as long as they're playing this year.
All right, Joe, well, unless you have anything else to add, we're going to wrap this one up.
Join the Big Ten, Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're talking about them. All right, Joe, that's all we have for you today. Notre Dame 23, Georgia 10 from Louisiana at the All-State Sugar Bowl. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into this recap. Please be sure to check out the other ones if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.